Do you know how your campaign is going to start? Well, if not, then keep watching. I'm JW the DM, and welcome to my channel. The very last stage of planning a campaign before running it is planning the very beginning of it. That's the step we're covering today, although you certainly don't need to have watched the previous videos to use today's information. If you want to watch my recommendations on how to begin planning your campaign, which is to plan the campaign's end, click here. If you want to learn what to do about planning the middle of your campaign, or why you shouldn't try and write up everything about your campaign and its world and every plot point before running a campaign, well, the links to those two videos are in the description. By the way, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. No need to wait until the end of the video. As I just alluded to, when starting to plan a campaign, it's best to start at the end of the campaign.
To start with the end in mind.
This gets a decent amount of detail, but not too much. It gives you a direction to make all your other planning point to. It's understood that this ending and all your notes about it may be thrown out or at least heavily revised as the campaign goes on. It might be a direction to point to, but that direction could be a 180 from the direction at the start.
Continually altering course based on that.
And the vast, gigantic middle of the campaign gets only the loosest of outlines, if you could even call it that, and very little detail except for maybe some minor bosses and a couple potentially important NPCs. This has to be very flexible to accommodate for the players having agency and making decisions that change absolutely everything. The beginning, however, the very beginning is a different matter. This is where the most detail goes in. You can spend many hours on this and still not feel prepared, but just a few hours is plenty, and a DM never feels fully prepared, so you roll with it anyway. You need to know the most immediate circumstances of the PCs, where they are, what they're doing right at the starting moment when their fates are handed over to the players, what adventure hooks they'll be presented with, and how those hooks may affect both the overall story, but also the next few sessions. This can take as little as 30 minutes to 3 hours. Any more time than that, and I'm pretty sure you're overthinking and over-preparing this. I'll admit, I'm a prepper, so I keep prepping in my spare time well after I'm done with the minimal prep, and I'll do a separate video on session preparation. Here's what you'll want to figure out: where the PCs are right when the session begins. 2 or 3 ways to get started in the campaign. If you've gotten buy-in from the players to more or less make decisions they believe will thwart the BBEG, if you have one, you get a bonus point. Now, if you worked with them to have a compelling reason in their backstory to take up one of the available story hooks, you get a gold star. 3. Map the layout of this place they're starting in. Have a brief description ready to tell the players. 4. Know at least 1 to 3 NPCs that are important for starting the first quest or adding verisimilitude to the environment. A barkeep or innkeeper, for example, verisimilitude, or the guy in the hooded cloak that's a quest giver. What are their names, motivations, etc.? Write a few keywords or a sentence or two about them. What's Number 5, the layout of the area immediately around the beginning location, and if there is anything of note in these places. A few blocks around the tavern in the city and town, perhaps most of a village, etc. 6, where the PCs are most likely to go for their first quest. 7, what all they may encounter on the road to that location, especially if you can make it story related. And 8, the prep of the dungeon, in air quotes, itself. And I use air quotes because the area of the first quest could be outside in the woods, in a dungeon, in a ruin, in a city. Dungeon is serving more as a term of generalized location with a set of possible encounters that would, hopefully, end in the achievement of a goal, which it could be the thing the quest giver or the job board requested, or the clue to finding the next set of bad guys, or whatever, the MacGuffin, as you will. But have a map. Know what's in the rooms or encounter areas, and know what the reward is, and know why the reward is what it is. Don't forget to make sure that one or more of the encounters is connected to the overall campaign story. The boss may or may not be connected. The MacGuffin, though, almost always is. For new DMs and GMs, I suggest using the 5-room dungeon plan created by John 4. I've got a link to it below. Google it. Look for videos about it here on YouTube. The thing I'll say right now is, don't just have 5 rooms in a row, in a line. Have them interconnect in ways that allow the players to take different paths to get through the rooms and reach the final boss and reward. 9. And know why this and any other potential starting quest is important to getting the PCs mired up in the air quotes plot, as in how will it eventually lead to accepting the next quest hook so things can progress. If you know all this, remembering the good description for the starting location and maybe for something interesting happening right when the adventure starts, you're golden. Now, I often find that at the very start of a campaign, knowing about 2 sessions worth of prep, with the majority of the detail prepped for session 1, is handy. If you're new to campaign building, guessing how much material is 1 to 2 sessions worth is tough. Start with what you think gets you through maybe 5 or so encounters for 1 session. Different tables get through a different amount of encounters in a session, so your mileage may vary. Notice that I haven't had you fill in everything. Remember, you only need to spend 1 to 3 hours max on this initial preparation. Anything beyond that is just adding lore and or flavor, which I love. I add lots of lore and flavor. You'll be expected to make up the not so important NPCs on the spot. And believe me, sometimes the PCs glom onto those improvised NPCs and they suddenly become major players in the game going forward. Players seem to enjoy characters DMs make up on the spot. Go figure. Anyway, NPCs that aren't like the innkeeper or the quest giver can generally be made up on the spot. In that separate video on preparing your first session that I'll dive into this more, but you can semi-randomly give these NPCs clues about the first adventure, rumors that might lead to the follow-up quest, and just plain old entertainment. For more on that kind of use for NPCs, let me refer you to Mike Shea over at Sly Flourish. He talks a lot about what he calls secrets and clues, and his strategy for that works miracles. Likewise, you can make up different businesses and their proprietors and people on the street and descriptions of buildings on the spot. You don't need to map out the insides of businesses unless there's a potential combat there, so, Otherwise, relatively inconsequential encounters should generally be done as theater of the mind, or totem, or TOTM. Theater of the mind. That's basically without maps or visuals, just a little description and your imagination. Now, some DMs, GMs are intimidated by possibly improvising some of that, but believe me, in the moment, you can do it. And if your session isn't for another day or two, or even an hour or two, you can always use the extra time to build out your world a little more, including this initial stuff. But focus on the very first location, the area around it, the potential first quest or quests, the end location, and encounters, combat or otherwise, along the way. Yes, this also means you need to improv things if the PCs choose to do something other than what you've planned and prepped. Roll with it. I've always found that whatever prep I've done, as long as I'm willing to let the PCs not discover it, that prep helps me improv however the world will respond to what the PCs actually do. Then, at the end of the first session, you'll have a clearer view of what the PCs are likely to do next, and planning the next session should be even easier. Now, if what they're going to do next isn't clear, feel free to ask the players at the end of the session, What do you plan to do next? And then you can prep session 2 accordingly. Now, we've gone over a lot of information today. Thank you for sticking with it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and set the bell icon to always. May all your games be full of glory. Till next time.